Catherine Bitzer, Catherine, archivist for the Sisters of St. Joseph of St. Augustine, Florida, and archivist for the Catholic Diocese of St. Augustine, Florida.
Perfect. Okay. Do you want to be in focus
Yes,
or not? You do? Okay.
What's that mean?
He's
You
teasing
wanna-
you.
Be
I
focused?
have to check my phone.
Oh,
I was like,
thank
do you want to be in focus or not?
I thought it was a magazine.
It's happened. Oh, yeah. There probably is. Okay. Same drill. Go back in time and tell me about yourself as a little girl growing up. Where you grew up, what kind of little girl you were.
Okay. I grew up on Long Island, New York. My father and mother both grew up on Long Island, as well as their mom and dads, all from Long Island. My mom was fun-loving and of Irish descent, mostly, Irish and English, and Dad was German, and he was serious. So I learned a lot from my mom of dancing in the kitchen. You know, she taught me fun things. Dad, serious, taught me how to wash a car, how to swim, how to garden, how to ice skate. All the how-tos, he taught me how. My love of gardening comes from him, and both of my grandparents had wonderful flower gardens and vegetable gardens, so that's something that I love to do is garden. As a little girl, I loved to ice skate. I didn't like algebra as I was growing up in high school. I loved all my girlfriends. I had girlfriends of different nationalities. And that, I think, was a blessing in my life. And I think I learned a lot from them and their families. Going to church, that was part of growing up. And I used to take, if my mom and dad didn't go, I would take one of my girlfriends who was not a Catholic, and I would bring her with me, and we would walk to the Polish church. Mass was in Polish. I don't know that I knew anything that was going on, but did go.
So go back a little bit. So, were your mom and dad deeply religious? Was church?
They were religious, but I think as time went on and work got in the way, sometimes they weren't able to go. So that's why I would walk by myself or with my girlfriends.
All right. So even at a young age, you had that discipline that you and that hunger that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. There was no choice, really. You know, you had to go.
Yeah.
And I do have an older sister, a year and a half older than me. And it was really the two of us because my younger sister was 9.5 years younger than me. So she was like little. And I used to take her everywhere that I went with my girlfriends. She was with me. So.
Who were some of the other people who influenced you
As I was growing?
as you were growing?
As a young girl?
Mm-hmm.
Probably my great aunt on my dad's side was somebody who taught me how to crochet and how to do things like that. That stayed with me forever. She was a gentle soul, and she would be the one that would go outside. My father's mother had cancer, and so I didn't have too much interaction with her. But my great aunt, I did, and they lived in the same 2-story house. So she was the one that would cut the flowers, and my grandfather, you know, that kind of thing. You'd always go home with a bouquet of flowers from both sets of grandparents. You had that. So they were important people in my life. And my great aunt and my great uncle were important to me. My mother's brothers and all my cousins, they were all, you know, we grew up together, so.
A lot of cousins.
Mm-hmm. Enough.
Enough.
Yeah. Right, probably like 8.
That's enough. especially if you're living close together.
Hmm.
What kind of work did your dad do?
My dad worked for Ballantine Beer Company as a younger man. Then he came down south. My whole family was into taverns, and some were in Florida, and that's how I ended up in Florida. My mother's brothers and sisters were all in Florida, and my one uncle was a distributor for Ballantine Beer in Miami. So family kind of drifted this way in time.
So I heard a story way back, or about, I guess, I guess it would have been Prohibition. So you can confirm this or not. Not that you lived through Prohibition. I'm not saying that, but so the beer makers, whatever, when Prohibition took hold, they started making ice cream. Did you ever hear that? Was that a
No.
piece of history?
Not that I
Because
know
they
of.
had the coolers, the chillers, or whatever. I was just wondering.
No.
Okay, didn't know if that
No.
was anything your dad
No,
experienced or whatever.
no, but off the record,
Mhm.
not on the record.
Okay, sure.
I had a lot of fun. On Sunday mornings, my dad would take me down to the tavern, which was like 2 blocks from the house, and I learned how to wash glasses in 2 tubs with brushes and do it the right way.
Yeah,
So I learned a lot,
yeah.
you know, and swept up and did things like that. So that was good.
Yeah.
I learned to work.
Right. So sort of take me through, I guess, time and growing up and moving and education.
Right, okay. I went to Catholic schools and public schools. I went to both because sometimes it was impossible as we moved to get into a Catholic school right away. So I enjoyed public school, learned a lot. Catholic school, learned a lot. Come the 8th grade, I wanted to stay with my public school girlfriends. And so I fought to go to public high school, which I did for a year. And then I wasn't learning my algebra like I should. And my father was giving me lessons, but it was very hard. And so he said, he went down to meet the teacher, stood outside the classroom door, watched the teacher teach children after school. No discipline, and my father took me right out of that school and back into Catholic high school, so Catholic high school. And so it was around that time that I came south and went to high school, 2 different high schools down here. So I went to 4 different high schools, and I graduated in Miami from Notre Dame Academy. But during that time, I also worked, I guess my junior summer and senior year. And after that, at Mercy Hospital, which was one of our hospitals, and I worked there. The hospital opened in 1950, and I was working there probably in 57, and met a lot of our sisters there, plus in the high school. So I got to know a lot of the hospital sisters and loved them dearly, and they had a big impact, I guess, on my life. Got to live here and live with some of them, and they didn't even remember, but it was a paying job. We were trained. Sister Conrad trained us, and then we went on the floors, and we worked pretty hard. But it was a great experience for me, and my sister worked there and my cousin, so we had a good time.
Were they primarily Sisters of St. Joseph?
They were Sisters of St. Joseph that staffed the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Was there anything that set them apart? Were you exposed to any other sisters, like Dominicans or anything? And did you notice a difference, or was there a...
I think that they were very cordial, very hospitable, and very caring. But I can say I also had the Benedictines in San Antonio, and they were lovely people too. So I know when I was discerning, it was not easy to choose which way to go. But I think I was not allowed to enter when I wanted to enter. My aunt and my father said, not now. They thought I would get married and have a big family. That was what, I was always the one that was going to have all these children. And So, and I was dating, and they thought, he's probably going to be the one. So you're not going to enter now, you're going to start college. So I went to Barry College for a term, and they said after that, if you still want to, you may. So that's what happened. So then, if I lost track of this story somewhere,
No, you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine.
so I finally entered, and the sisters helped me. They were very, very good, and they also went to Barry College, some of the sisters, taking courses, so I was always like near them. Okay, now where am I in my story?
So you're about, what, 19, 18?
18.
18?
Yeah.
And what, was there a turning point when you realized you really wanted to do this? You wanted to become a sister?
Probably in high school, working with the sisters, having them in high school, although, did a lot of crazy things in high school, but that and working at the hospital, probably, both of those things. And just a wanting to serve. I've always wanted to serve in some, I guess, and that was what was, I don't know.
Okay.
That's where I was led, called.
Okay. So your dad allows you to
Mm-hmm.
become a sister. We'll pick
And
up.
then later on, very proud of me.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, but not at the time, So,
Well, he had his plan.
like all parents do.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Right, right.
You had to get used to that.
Yeah.
So sort of take me through
Where
your
am I?
travels, where you
My
worked.
travels.
Yeah.
Let's see. I began teaching. Where did I start teaching? Or somewhere in there. I guess I started teaching in St. Petersburg. And I was there for a short time. And then I went down to Coral Gables at St. Teresa's School and was there for about 6 years. I loved it. We had a very, very tough principal. But in retrospect, she taught us what we needed to know as teachers. And it was during the Cuban crisis, and we had, we had to learn Spanish. It was the first wave of Cubans coming over. And so we had to take classes after school, learn the Spanish so we could teach the children. They were great children. And after being there for about, I guess, 6 years, I was sent to Winter Haven. Block that out.
Okay. Okay.
I was sent to another part of the state, and I guess growing up in New York, sisters were plentiful. They were everywhere. In Miami, kind of. In the part of Florida that I was sent to, they had never seen sisters, and so I had the habit on, and you would go to the store or the supermarket, and people would just kind of look at you, and I was not used to that. So a telephone call came, and everything always happens to me through a phone call. I received a phone call, and I was asked, would I come to St. Pius School in Jacksonville and teach? And so I said, yes, that would be wonderful, sure. I mean, wouldn't say no anyway. So Sister was devastated that I was leaving, but so I went, and I went in January, and I went in as a teacher. The next year, or 6 months later, or whatever, I was the principal, but and stayed there for 20 years. But I had to lay the foundation the first time that I walked into the classroom, because they had already had several teachers in this 8th grade class. And so when they saw me, I could see it on their faces, all these guys who were taller than I was. Oh, we're going to have some more fun. So my first day in, the next day, first thing that I did was I knew who they were already, just from looking in the classroom and waving to them. You're going to move here, move your seat over there, broke it up. And And I loved every minute of teaching that class. I still have all their pictures. So I guess that was 1968 is when I went there, and I guess it was civil rights time and that kind of thing as an African American community. So I loved it there, and stayed there for a very, very long time, almost 20 years. It was pretty hard to get me out of there, and kind of devastating at that point. I got another phone call, and that phone call was, would I come here and be the general secretary to the general superior? Well, I did come, and naturally I came, right? And cried my eyes out because I missed the children so much. So it took me probably a year. Sister Elizabeth Ann had to put up with me. I had a good face, I think, when I turned, and she was by my door. But it was hard. And so I stayed as her secretary for 8 years, and then Sister Florence came on as General Superior, and she asked me if I would remain. At that point, I became a member of the council, the governing team. So I was a counselor and secretary too, but I was a traveling counselor. Florence wanted me to go around the state and visit all the sisters as part of my ministry to see how they were doing. And we had a lot of different places throughout Florida, so I did that, and I loved it because I got to meet everybody and see what they were doing. And that was good. After that, I decided I wanted to go in. Oh, I know. By the end of my term with Sister Florence, I had been here 12 years, and that was like enough. And I decided I needed to do something else because it was a long time to be here in one place doing that kind of thing. So I decided I thought it would be really great to go into the chaplaincy program at Baptist Hospital. So I went there, and I lived here and traveled back and forth, and I loved it. I had a wonderful, the man who was in charge of it, he's probably still there right now, an absolutely wonderful mentor teacher. And so I learned how to be a chaplain. It took a year, and then after that, you were on the floors anyway, but then you were salaried. And I worked between St. Vincent's Hospital and Baptist because the two hospitals at that time were somehow connected. So I started doing that, and then another bump in the road comes. Not through a telephone call, but Sister Thomas Joseph was in Tampa at St. Peter Claver, another African-American school, and she came and she said, Kathy, don't you think that you would like to come to St. Peter Claver? And I'd say, Sister Thomas, she'd come for a meeting, and I'd say, Sister Thomas Joseph, I've just been trained to be a chaplain, and I love what I'm doing. Okay, so that settled that until we had another meeting a few months later. And she came back in the dining room. We'd be online getting our food, and she'd say, have you given it some thought? You know, I'm going to be leaving there soon. You think you would like to come? And so anyway, this kept up. So finally, I did some thinking about it, of course, and I said, well, I certainly love teaching, love being principal, and maybe I have some more years that I can give to this. And so I went, and oh, am I happy I went. They were the most marvelous little children that God ever created. So they were just darling. And I spent 8 years there with them, and it's right by Ybor City, St. Peter Claver. Good children and eager to learn. So I had a great time there. I think one of my stories was I would take the third grade girls and boys, mostly the girls. Boys would catch right on and teach them etiquette and how to, I'd take them in up where the stage was and put them on the stage and teach them how to shake a hand and how to introduce themselves to, well, they would do it to me, but all the nice things so that they could go out on the playground in the mornings and practice on the teachers. As the teachers came into the yard, I'd watch, and they'd put their hand out and shake hands, put the hand all the way in, give a good shake, and practice welcoming them to the school. So that as time went on and we had speakers come to the school, that they would be able to go out to these speakers and feel like they were able to do it and with confidence. And so I did a lot of that with the children, and I think that those children, they are grown up now, at least could take that with them. They love to learn. It was marvelous because their moms and dads hadn't had that opportunity of even going to school. Like, most of them dropped out when they were 14, 15, 16, had these children, and these parents wanted those children to have a good education. And so I had the backing of the parents, had these little children eager to learn, about 100 of them, so it was a small number, but that was good for that type of a school. So I loved that, and I guess I didn't really want to leave, but the telephone rang again. This time it was Sister.
Is this where you did the fundraising?
That's where we did the fundraising.
About the poor school and how you raised money.
Well, it was a school that was in need of funds, and this has to sound right. Okay. It was a school that was in need of funds, and we wrote grants. I had a lady at the school who just came in, not salaried, just by her goodness, the goodness of her heart. I had a lot of volunteers there from the community, actually from another church that was very wealthy, and they would come and help.
Who came up with the idea to even to create that kind of fundraiser? I mean, what? Was all athletes or people in sports or?
No. I'm kind of blank.
That's okay.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Go on about it.
That particular one, I don't know if the father called me or if they were there somewhere and wanted to come see the school. Gosh, I can't remember at this moment. I'm blank. Isn't that terrible? That's a great story.
It'll come to you, and as soon as it does, you just blurt it out.
Okay. You don't remember what I told you?
I thought that you said that he came to visit you. I thought that that's how
He
you
did.
told me.
He came to the school.
Just spontaneously.
Oh,
Something about it was the same kind of school his son was raised in.
and that's true. Right, in Kalamazoo.
Oh.
It's all right.
It's okay.
We'll just let it go. Yeah,
We'll let it go.
let it go. It'll come.
Okay. So
So you moved on.
You
You
moved
got another
on.
phone call.
Another phone call. This time it was from Sister Ann. And she asked me, would I like to be the archivist for the congregation? And now I'm blank again, and for the diocese, I guess, at the same time. Mike Morgan, right, okay. For the sisters and for the Catholic Diocese of St. Augustine. Oh, I guess I must have asked her, how come me?
right.
Something like that, or, and she said, well, you have a great love of the history of the congregation. And in years past, when I was secretary, I did a newsletter that had all the stories from our sisters who were deceased, I would get them from Sister Mary Albert, who worked in the archives, and she would feed me papers, and I would type up stories, the parts that I liked. And so she said, I always knew you loved our history. So that I thought maybe you'd like to be the archivist. I said, well, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Maybe I can do that. And so I came, and I love what I'm doing now. So it was
What year was that?
when did I come here? I came here in 2008, in August, September of 2008, and started my work and started learning how to do it. And we have records upstairs from 1594, the earliest records. So we have records of the beginning of St. Augustine, the oldest Catholic documents in the United States of America, in the continental United States of America, are boxed upstairs. I think you saw them. Yeah. And so people from all over the country and the world ask about those records, want to know different things. And so we have a lot of people that come here for research from churches. A lot of work is done online, and I answer whatever I can, find whatever I can, put records in order. All the bishops' records are upstairs, and some of them still need to be put in order, so I'm working on that as I work on other things.
What does it range from as far as artifacts or types of materials that one would see up there if you could open it all up? And
We have the sacramentary records, so we have all of the early, like late 1500s, baptism records, marriage records. We have confirmation records. We have death records of every nationality that you can think of under the sun, from all over the islands, wherever people came from. We have the sacramental records. Then we have the records of all the bishops from the very beginning. The first bishop, Bishop Verreau, who came here, who was actually here before. He was Bishop of Savannah, and he was over the territory of Florida. So I have all of his early records and what Florida was like at that time. He walked Florida, and a lot of Florida, in big boots through whatever he had to go through, on horseback, any mode of transportation, boat. Okay, and then I have each of the following bishops. I have all their papers. I have that type thing. What else?
what are some of the more
Artifacts.
some of the more modern day types of artifacts do you have?
The artifacts.
From paper to
The artifacts are basically, all different things that were down at the cathedral, were at, say, Immaculate Conception, downtown Jacksonville. Many of the better artifacts are at the Catholic Museum here in the city, so they're on display there. But
Chalices.
pictures and chalices and all different types of things, some books.
And you also house personal artifacts from the sisters as well, right?
Yes, I have the sisters' archives and artifacts from the sisters. A lot of those are in the museum here, but a lot of them are upstairs. Yeah.
So can anybody just knock on the door one day and say, "Hey, I need this"?
No.
Tell me about what someone would have to go through.
They would email me and let me know who they are and what they're seeking and why they need it. If they knock on the door, I ask them to come in and fill out a piece of paper here as to what they might like, but that I couldn't get it for them at this particular time because it involves research. Anything you look up takes time. You can't find things quickly. So I do it that way. I also put everything into my computer. So all the documents that are upstairs that I have been through so far are on the computer so that I can find them because a lot of boxes up there.
Yeah.
So they're labeled, but the real labeling is inside the computer.
Is that a sort of a landlocked database, or is it something that's shared with the
Well,
church at large? Or
the very old records, all the way to the mid-18, say 1831, somewhere, are online. And anyone can access those. But they're in Spanish and Latin, and they have not been translated, so most people, would have a difficult time reading them. A lot of the early records, once you see how they're written, and you figure out the number system, I can figure out and find things that way. It takes time, though. And so if they want something, they have to really know the name of the person, and if it's a baptism record, they really have to know the date, because there's so many written up there that, you can't spend hours and hours looking for one person. So it gives them a little research to do. So.
now, are you able to do that on your authority, or does it have to be cleared through the church, or?
No, the old records are public,
Okay.
for the public, yeah,
Okay.
right. So if somebody wants to know something, if the record is here, for their great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, and I can find it, I can give that to them. I scan it to them,
Okay.
right. So,
Okay.
we doing good?
We're doing good. Where do we go from here?
There's one story that perhaps you could tell about the two folks who came over from Croatia.
Picture's right there. Maybe the picture will help.
It's just a very interesting story. It was the two of the first people that I met when I was here.
I have lots of pictures, but you can see that from around the room.
All right.
I don't know how I'll do on this, so.
That's okay.
Oh, right. Because when you're in the midst of it, you don't have it all. So I can kind of tell you what this is. This picture went, all the Associated Press picked it up, and I should be able to tell you the year, but I don't have it. It's the Bishop Hurley he was the 6th bishop of St. Augustine, and he was bishop here for many, many years, okay? 1940 to 1967, approximately. And Bishop Hurley did a lot of work in Yugoslavia. He was the papal nuncio for the United States in Yugoslavia. And he knew this man, Stepanak. And Stepanak was asked, I think, to make his church a certain kind of a church. I can't think of what it is.
State church.
A state church. And he refused. Okay? This is really broken, isn't it? A state church. And so he wouldn't do that, and so he was put under house arrest for the rest of his life. This is his trial, and here's Bishop Hurley. He was at the trial, and the reason that the picture went worldwide is because he bowed to Stepanak when Stepanak went past him, and those are the German soldiers watching. So we had 2 people come here from Croatia because this is the only place in the world, I guess, that has the records of Archbishop Hurley and Stepanak, and they're all upstairs. I have the whole trial of Stepanak on paper that is this narrow and about this long. and I don't know how many pages, 60,
Is it
80.
typed or handwritten?
It is. It's handwritten, I think. All handwritten. So they came here and they worked and they thought they were in like heaven to have found the documents. And the man that came, I should know his name, and I would have to get it for you if you wanted it. He is the one who's putting the cause of Stepanak up for sainthood. And so, what's the name for that?
Canonization.
No, the name of the man,
His name was Monsignor.
no, the process. Anyway,
The canonization process?
yeah, some other word. But anyway, that's what this is all about. And those folks, when they were here, I mean, he went through every single article that was upstairs.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, you told the story.
What's the most challenging part of this job? When you're the keeper of
Of the
the history.
I don't know. It's all. I kind of like it. I like to. I like to find things for people, and it's kind of important for me to search. Sometimes just balancing when I can't find something. That's a challenge. To keep looking until I find it. I don't know. I kind of enjoy all of it. It's enjoyable. You know, people need things. They've gone to different places to find them, even if it's their marriage certificate, you know, in some place, and they need that because they're 90 years old and they want to be married again, so they, you know, need that record. So whatever it is that people need, and dedications of churches. We have all the early records of all the Catholic churches throughout Florida. They're here. And that means all the beginnings of the churches say that Hurley, you know, he is the one who, he's the helicopter bishop. He took a helicopter and went down. He knew, he was friends with people, political friends who knew where I-95 was going to go. And so in a helicopter he went down and he just figured out where all these churches were going to be. And so even before that, all the early records of these little churches that started, that all looked like, you see those little
Typical little.
throughout Florida. That's fascinating that he was able to do that, and I lost track of myself of what I was saying.
No, you were talking about the fact that he identified properties throughout the state of Florida, not just for schools.
Oh, and that all those records of all the beginnings of those churches are here. And it was only in 1958 that the diocese split, and into the north, Bishop Hurley, into the south, Archbishop Coleman Carroll. And so that was a big thing for the diocese, splitting of the diocese. Okay.
What did, how has technology helped you or hindered you in,
Oh,
I
it's
assume it's helped.
Oh, definitely has been a wonderful help. I don't think I could do it without technology. I mean, it would be a different ballgame.
Typically, how would you use, what are the tools you would use, and how would you use them to do this work? I mean,
Which tools? What I have now?
Yeah, like, well, for your computer, you're obviously digitizing stuff and labeling stuff and archiving it that way, but really hands-on, how has technology sort of sped up the process or helped you get something to somebody? Or
Oh, definitely. I mean, the copy machine, without the copy machine, would be it would be mailing everything, you know. And now people have things that they want. You know, if they asked me for them, I could have it to them if they needed it probably in an hour. Just go to my computer if I can type in what they need. and I have it. I can go upstairs, get it, scan it, and it's gone. And so people around the state, a lot of these little churches that I told you about, are celebrating their anniversaries of whatever. Could be the Knights of Columbus down in Miami at Jesu. It could be a church 60 years old, 50 years old, 75 years old, and they want their beginnings. They don't know their beginnings. And so upstairs are books with pictures of a lot of these beginnings. And so I can scan pictures to them, and that certainly is quick and easy for me. So I don't know how I would do it if I didn't have these tools. I'd have to think about that. But that'd be hard. So
I think she's got it. You did good, sister. You gave your whole history, you know what I mean, and you showed the stepping stones of how you got from here to there, and I think you did good.
one story I didn't tell you
Well, tell us.
is because Sister Kathleen told me they were going to ask me this maybe.
Oh, okay. What was that?
What were those two questions? I told you about the little third grade girls.
Right.
The other one was, what do you do when, was something, the second question you asked her. Well, I said, I have a story for that. A difficult time.
Okay. Yeah.
When, and I only learned this in my later years. I wasn't this smart in my earlier years. But when two children would get into a fuss, of whatever kind of a fuss, either on the playground into a fuss or in the classroom, they would come to the office because that's where they would end up. And my desk was like right here, but right outside my door, which I could see, were two chairs. They were like you and I are, okay, a little bit closer because it was a small office, okay. It was like the walkway. And I would put one there and one here. Now, some of these fights were not acceptable at all. Others were verbal fights. And so they would sit, and I'd say to them, and they didn't want to come to the office for sure. So I would sit them there, and being closer, they would have only one another really to look at, okay? And so I would keep my eye on them, but they didn't kind of know that. And I'd say to them, I'll be back in a few minutes. I have one thing I have to get finished, and then I'll be right out. And so in I'd go, wait a few minutes, watch them, and their madness of being angry with each other turned into looking at each other, not so mad, starting to talk with one another, then laughing with one another, and then that was my signal. Come out, bring them in. And they were friends. And so I didn't have to say too much except, do better now and go. It's marvelous.
Wow.
But it was a good way to get children to become friends again. Because they really were friends. Something happened and it made them mad.
Your next phone call will be to go to Washington, D.C. and clean up the world.
Clean up the world, no. But I love teaching, and I really have loved everything that I've done. And I think that I'm kind of blessed that way. I don't know that everybody likes what they're doing, but I have enjoyed it all. So that's my story. Thank you very much.
Good. All right.
I can tell you enjoy what you're doing too, and you too.
We do. We do.
We need to bring etiquette back because kids don't say
Oh, I
hello
love
to
doing
you,
that.
or they
Social
don't shake
graces.
your hand.
Yeah, you got to get them when they're little, though.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's when you couldn't do that with
No, excuse me.
couldn't do that with 8th graders or 7th graders or 6th graders. Maybe do it with 5th.
Yeah.
And
At
fourth.
some point, there's a point of no return.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you either know it or you don't know it, or you learn it later on when you get a job.
Right.
But they were good kids.
Sister, have you ever regretted being a sister of St. Joseph?
Oh no,
Have you ever thought it was a bad idea? Have you ever thought, gosh, I made a mistake?
no. I've kind of loved what I do and loved who I am. Oh, I have to tell you this story. I might have told you.
Wait a minute. Okay.
And I don't know that this is for the record or not, but I walked into my sister. I just came back from my sister's funeral, okay, my younger sister. And I was devastated. And we flew, Sister Carolyn and I flew into Orlando and then got in the car and to the airport and then started our journey home last Sunday. And it was dark and we hadn't eaten since we got off the plane, or we hadn't eaten since we got on the plane in the morning. So we were hungry, so we were getting near to land. And so it was dark and we said, maybe we could find a restaurant here. So here we go. She's driving, I'm watching. And I spotted one and I said, it looks like a pizza place. Is that all right? Sure. So we go and we park in this alleyway and we meet this man as we're going in. And I said, is the food good? And he said, oh, it's delicious. I said, okay, is it crowded? Because there were a lot of cars. And he said, yeah, but you'll find a spot. So off we went into the door and tables all filled and booths down both sides. One booth in the far back was free. Now I had slacks on and I was cold for some reason. And I took my jacket in because I figured anywhere I go I'm always freezing. So I had this big heavy jacket from the north on me, going in on my shoulders. And Sister Carolyn was dressed with her stuff too. And we both went in, sat down. And before we even ordered, okay, this lady comes from nowhere all the way up. I think she was picking up some food. And she came over to the table and she looked at both of us and she says, you're nuns, aren't you? And we were like, huh? How does she know that? Okay, just out of the blue. And so anyway, she ended up telling us her story. She went to Stetson University. She has 2 master's degrees. She has no job. She's homeless. And she's thought about being a sister many times. And I think she might have even come up here like 10 or 15 years ago. I don't know. But it was like, how did she know? So it's, to me, it's the, I don't know. Just, I don't know what it is, a manner, your manner. I don't know what it is, but you can walk down the street and, not have your cross on, which is our symbol of identification. And people they know. So I find that interesting. So anyway, just here to help whoever we can help, because that was our charism. Not to be distinguished from the neighbor, but to be with the neighbor. And work hand in hand with the neighbor so that nobody even knows who you are. Just to be present to people in whatever way that they may need it. So that's my
That's a
story.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a wrap. No, you see, at the
That-
last minute.
That was a great story.
That was a great story. That was a great story.
That's
Now, I've heard the story. Sister Carolyn told me the story, but I'm glad that you said it.
That's a chill.
Oh.
That's a chill bump.
I know.